All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be breaking down the Week 16 main slate. And guys, this is going to be probably the most difficult main slate I think that we have had thus far, which could be a good thing. You know, we'll see. That could lead to everyone else being able to have to make some tough decisions. But let's go ahead and get into it. I do want to start out with the quarterback. So quarterback is very difficult in the sense that there really isn't a standout play to me. Each play kind of has its flaws. We start out with Dak going against Miami. I do feel the safest about Dak against Miami, but we can see against Buffalo coming in off of a bad game, that is going to be concerning. Now, this is supposed to be a high scoring game. That's probably going to be a game that we should be chasing. Yes, if I want to pay for someone, it would be him. You look at Justin Fields, he gets a good matchup going against Arizona, but you know, he really hasn't been impressive over the last 3 weeks now. You take away one fluky touchdown pass against Detroit, a play that 85 to 90% of the time has been blown dead. Really 3 bad weeks in a row. And I've talked about this the whole season. I don't really get the love for Justin Fields. I don't get why he continues to be priced this way. If he was priced correctly, say at Trevor Lawrence's price tag, we could be thinking about it, but they continue to overprice him to the point where there's no point of playing him. Trevor Lawrence, for that instance, he is in a good spot. He is still banged up. We know that. I do, in a way, feel safe about him as a play. He's been able to produce the last really 3 weeks. If you want to go 5 weeks against more difficult matchups, now he gets a seemingly good matchup against Tampa Bay. I do think that he's a great chance to get the over. I don't know why I said over in the props brain right now, but I do think he has a great chance to at least get at 20 fantasy points in this one. Makes sense to pay it for him, but at the same time, if you're playing Trevor Lawrence, you might as well just play Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has definitely looked good the last 2 weeks. Prior to the last 2 weeks, had been struggling. He had kind of been regressing back to what we had seen on film. There's a lot of hype around Baker, kind of false hype, it seemed like at the beginning of the season, and then he kind of regressed back into who we know as a player. And then the last 2 weeks has looked really good. Now, I do want to point out that the last 2 weeks he has literally faced 2 defenses that have made quarterbacks that aren't that good look good. I mean, Packers made Tommy DeVito a thing, right? Atlanta, pretty much every quarterback that had their first start against them had a good game. So it wouldn't be surprising for him to have a worse game against Jacksonville. But at the same time, Jacksonville has been a very easy matchup as well. So I do expect Baker Mayfield to be able to take advantage of that matchup. And it's ugly. I hate trusting Baker. Like, there was a bunch of throws last week where he was threading the needle, and he did do that. He was able to complete those. But man, you put a better defensive scheme together, and those are probably picks. It really seemed like they were trying to bait him into picks, and then he just was able to thread the needle due to poor ball skills by DB. From there, I actually don't mind the idea of playing Nick Mullins, and I've been flirting around with this idea of just paying down for Nick Mullins. Gets a good matchup going against Detroit. Obviously, he has all of his pass weapons back, and I personally think I have the salary that I want to use elsewhere, and so I think Nick Mullins actually makes more sense. I don't want to talk down about Baker after a career game, after really 2 awesome weeks where he did look good. But all in all, is there a big difference between him and Mullins? We'll see. I don't know if I want to pay $700 more for Baker while basically getting the exact same play, Nick Mullins, $700. It's weird, guys. Again, that's the difficulty of this week. It's like, it's ugly. Running back wise, it's also ugly as well. We get Mostert going against Dallas. Now, Mostert has been a stud. We all know that, but this matchup against Dallas is not one that we want to be targeting. Like Dallas, up until last week when James Cook made them they had been good. They had been great against the run. So all in all, I don't know if we need to get to Mostert. You have Jonathan Taylor coming back. I fully expect Jonathan Taylor to get a workload, especially with Zach Moss being banged up. And you know what, guys, the matchups haven't really mattered too much for the Colts running backs. And so if there was one play that I felt comfortable paying up for at running back, it would be Jonathan Taylor. The question is, do we need to do that? Tough to say for sure. I do expect him to hit the ground running. I currently will pay it for him. From there, what do we do? Because you got Derrick Henry in a pretty good matchup going against Seattle, but he is so hit or miss. He is so game script dependent, and that Seattle offense has looked better. I personally don't want to get there. You got Bijan Robinson and the confusion and frustration with him as an asset fantasy-wise, so I can see why people would want to pass up on him. Breece Hall gets a good matchup against Washington. To me, this is the one spot that I probably do want to get to the most, especially if he's going to be used in the passing game. That game against Miami was terrible right away. Okay, I expect him to have a good game in this game. We saw just 2 games ago where he had a really good game against Houston, and he's been a consistent fantasy producer. That was just a very good game for Miami, never close. So why would you get Breece Hall, who's already injured this season? Why would you get him more? And so I could talk myself into Breece Hall. You got James Conner in a pretty good spot as well. James Conner against Chicago, I do like. You know, the opportunities have been there for him, sure. A little bit touchdown dependent. You take away these touchdowns, and he's not having good games, great games, I should say. But all in all, this matchup against Chicago, I do think presents him with a great opportunity to score a touchdown. A lot of people are probably going to be flocking to Antonio Gibson again. I don't know. I still worry about the matchup with the Jets. It has been easier as of lately, but all in all, Antonio Gibson really hasn't been the thing. So all in all, I don't really want to go out of my way to play him. I do find this price tag for AJ Dillon to be interesting. He's expected back in this one, and the thing with it is like Aaron Jones is back as well. A good matchup against Carolina. My caution is if you go back to that game against the Giants, I honestly think they win that game if AJ Dillon isn't banged up. There's a few situations where like that's strange that they're not running with AJ Dillon, who has been getting 3.5 yards per carry. It's kind of unfortunate. As a Packers fan, it felt like a bad beat. It kind of went unnoticed on the broadcast, which was honestly, I think broadcast crews have been bad this year. I don't want to get off on that tangent, but all in all, he has been doing his job very well. I don't see his role really changing too much unless he really is hindered by that thumb injury. It is a risk reward thing, but all in all, I do think he gives us a great chance at 2x. Like if he was healthy for sure at this price tag, I don't even think we'd be questioning it with how he's been used. Like Aaron Jones is going to get 50% of the work. AJ Dillon probably going to get 50% of the work. Who has the better touchdown likelihood in this matchup against Carolina? It's AJ Dillon. And so I really don't mind it. Again, like we're trying to find some plays like Tyler Algier. Man, oh man, do we want to mess with that? It's a cheap price tag. Deonta Foreman in a very, very cheap price. Okay. He missed practice on Friday. I don't think we're worried about that. But those Chicago Bears running backs, they kind of just feel like a headache, kind of feel like a stay away. From there, do we want to go Chris Rodriguez, who surprisingly wasn't used at all in the passing game, had 10 opportunities in that game. Wouldn't be surprising to see him have a big game. That's the issue this week, is that there's really no logical good plays at the running back spot. For now, I'll go with Breece Hall. He feels like the safest, but I could talk myself into AJ Dillon. That is the issue that I'm having, is that I could talk myself into lower price. So let's go ahead and move on into the receiver spot now. Yeah, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, they're both going to be in kind of smash spots, I would say. If you want to pay up for them, you certainly could. I don't want to get to ASB, kind of been a little bit hit or miss recently. Great matchup against Minnesota. I get that. To me, it's just a little bit too thin. I think I'd rather just go with Justin Jefferson. Again, if I'm playing Nick Mullins at quarterback, I probably want to try to get to one of his pass catchers, whether it's Jefferson, whether it's TJ Hawkinson. That's kind of TBD, but all in all, I don't mind that. You have Mike Evans in a very good spot going against the Jaguars again. Baker Mayfield, we like as a quarterback play, so obviously we're going to like Mike Evans as a play. From there, DK Metcalf against Tennessee, I could talk myself into. I do worry about his ceiling a little bit. You got Amari Cooper in a pretty good spot. The targets have been there for him with Joe Flacco in at quarterback. This is seemingly a good matchup for him as well. Again, I could talk myself into that. Chris Godwin finally had a good game. It was super frustrating. He was someone I drafted a bunch in like best ball leagues and whatnot, season-long leagues, and super frustrating his role in this offense. It was nice to see them attack the middle of the field, and he had an awesome game. Why not go back to that? Like they should. Clear that your offense looked elite when you got your best receiver involved. Like, come on, it's not that hard. I know Baker's just like, toss it up to Mike Evans, let him do work. It's been working, and I know that this is not his strength. Okay, it worked out last, but all in all, they're easy short routes. Make it work. And like 10 targets in the last 2 weeks, that is something appealing to me, especially in this matchup. I could talk myself into it. At the same time, do you guys need to do that? Tough to say. You got Garrett Wilson in also a great spot going against Washington. The issue that we have with Garrett Wilson is that Zach Wilson, who would have thought we'd be saying that, right? But with that, I can easily see myself passing up on Garrett Wilson. Now, if we were getting Garrett Wilson at that price tag with Zach Wilson, we'd be gung-ho for it. We'd be all for it. So let's continue to move on. Again, guys, very frustrating slate that we have this week. I do want to get into really the Jacksonville Jaguars potential value that we have. Again, this is a matchup that we probably want to be targeting. Zay Jones looking like he's going to sit. If he plays, kind of, oh well, I still like Parker Washington, who we saw him kind of have that breakout game against Cincinnati. Cleveland, tough matchup, still had 3 targets and a touchdown. Last week against Baltimore, again, a more difficult matchup, 6 targets in that game. And so this is going to be a more favorable game. To me, I'm fine getting to Parker Washington as it sits right now. Again, I could probably talk myself out of that. Michael Wilson was back last week, only had 3 targets in that game. Tough matchup against the Niners. You would expect him to get more work in this game. It wouldn't be actually surprising if he actually becomes Kyler Murray's like number 1 receiver. A much better matchup this week for him. So again, wouldn't it be too shocking? A player that I could see myself getting into is actually going to be Alec Pierce. If we get news that Michael Pittman Jr. is out, that's very ugly. I get that. 5 targets in that game. He's not doing anything. Some people might actually talk themselves into DJ Montgomery, who should have had 2 touchdowns in that game. I could see it, guys. There is a realm of possibility where you are thinking about doing that. So again, I find the receiver spot extremely difficult this week. Do you want to go fair and balanced? Who knows? Honestly, I don't think it's really going to matter too much. I don't see any receiver as a priority. So let's go ahead and get into the tight ends, because I do see some priorities. You got TJ Hawkinson in a great spot going against the Detroit Lions. I love the idea of paying up for him. I love the idea of playing Sam Laporta, who's just been a stud as well. At the same time, you have Trey McBride in probably the best spot you could ask for. Now, he is priced up because he has been crushing. I mean, 11 targets, 9 targets, 9 targets. He has literally stepped up into this tight end friendly role for this Cardinals offense, and has been really just going off with. They have finally priced up Tucker Kraft to the point where it's no longer a no-brainer. Tough to say what we should do there. And so you guys probably know by now, I don't really like the idea of paying up for tight ends. I will say Jake Ferguson, you could get the same production out of him that you could out of these three. And then you also have Evan Ingram in a good spot as well. So again, like, the issue that we have is that the pricing's really correct this week, whereas the previous 2 weeks, there were some big edges. I'm struggling to make a build that I have extreme confidence in. It's just a weird week. All in all, I might just go with Jake Ferguson for now. He's like the lowest of the elite tight end plays I see for this week. From there, DST, you could actually end up paying for DST this week. I don't know if I exactly want to. I will say Minnesota against Detroit is kind of interesting. Minnesota's defense has been much better recently. And don't get me wrong, Detroit could make them go negative, but it's definitely an interesting thought. For now, I'm just going to put them in, hoping that they get, a couple sacks, couple turnovers, or maybe just one turnover, because they do pressure the quarterback. And we know Jared Goff as a quarterback, if there's any pressure, he turns into really a bad starting quarterback in the league, where if you don't get pressure on him, he looks like Matt Ryan out there. And so, that the Vikings know that they're going to try to get pressure on him. So with that, guys, we have 6.7 left over right now. Again, it's a weird, funky week, I will say. I hate the lineup process, honestly, so far. Like Chuba Hubbard, I do think a lot of people are going to try to get to. I actually don't mind that idea. He's going to be chalk. That's kind of why I hesitated to say him. We'll put him in there for now, because our lineups can be different enough to the point where it really doesn't matter if we're playing a chalky Chuba Hubbard. From there, 7.25 left over. I'm kind of fine going back to Chris Godwin, hoping that they continue to roll with him as kind of the top pass catcher, as the guy that's going to move the chains for them. And then we have a lot of salary left over. I want to pay up for Justin Jefferson. Like, you can make a solid build, and I will say, there's some correlation here. Minnesota quarterback, Minnesota defense, and Minnesota, Justin Jefferson. I'm okay with that. Again, a weird week. Not going to be a week that I'm probably attacking too much, but all in all, can't control the pricing, can't control the slate. Obviously, with the Saturday slate, with the Monday slates, it's a little bit different. But that is going to be all for today. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. I do appreciate that. Be on the lookout for more NFL coverage throughout the week. Let's have a good slate. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing.